perseverance and passion, and together with our partners, we now challenge the world to become the best ICT service provider. It's not going to be easy, but we will never stop striving towards our vision. Now that the goal is set and clear, our race to become the world's top ICT company has finally begun. Amid the sluggish recovery of global economy, key countries are introducing policies to protect their domestic industries. Since the global economic crisis, the scope of protectionism has expanded markedly, with stronger enforcement of competitive laws and intellectual property rights. In particular, strict competition laws and regulations have emerged as a new risk for global corporations. Such firms are suffering greater financial losses due to the rigorous enforcement of the competitive laws by the US and EU governments. On top of this, the risks inherent with the Chinese competition laws are posing an additional threat to these multinational corporations. At the same time, the protection of intellectual property is being further reinforced by the corporations and governments. This is mainly because a corporation's intellectual property has become a key to their success in this current patent war. Due to widespread protectionism, strict compliance with laws and regulations has become more important than ever to minimize the potential risks associated with global business. From now on, we must change. It's time for compliance. The key regulations we must observe when doing overseas business are related to cartel, anti-corruption, intellectual property rights, and personal data privacy. Let's have a close look at their definitions, related cases, and the precautions to be taken. First, let's examine cartels. A cartel is a form of collusion created through an agreement among competing firms to fix prices, contractual terms, or production quota in order to restrict fair competition. In order to create a fair market economy, over 100 nations worldwide are enforcing stringent controls on cartel activities. In the USA, the total amount of a corporation's penalties rose from $0.1 billion in 2003 to $1.14 billion in 2012. And, as for individuals, both the imprisonment term and the number of persons prosecuted have been increasing annually. However, over the last 5 years, a growing number of Korean companies which failed to meet the global compliance standards have been under investigation for possible cartels, and the total fine imposed worldwide has now reached almost 2.4 trillion Korean won. Since our business structure is premised on winning bids and providing diverse IT services to public, finance, medical, and educational sectors, our partner from certain transactions may become our competitor in another business domain. This, in turn, raises the risk of an ordinary business partnership being misconceived as a cartel. In order to prevent any misunderstandings, employees should not contact competitors or exchange even the simplest information or data, as such can be viewed as cartel. Precautions must be exercised when drafting documents, since the use of ambiguous expressions may be perceived as cartel. Second, let's consider anti-corruption. It is illegal to offer valuables, gifts, entertainment, or any other forms of bribes to domestic or foreign government officers or private clients for the purpose of seeking unfair profits. Most countries throughout the world, including the USA, Middle East, and China, are enhancing bribery regulations by defining them as serious crime and are applying heavier punishment pursuant to international conventions and their local laws. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is the U.S. foreign anti-corruption law, is applicable not only to the American corporations that offer bribes in overseas countries, but also to the foreign companies and foreigners who use the U.S. instrumentalities while offering bribery to the foreign government officer. In 2013, the British pharmaceutical company GSK was found liable for its subsidiaries' act of bribery done in China. This case reaffirms that a parent company is jointly liable if its overseas subsidiary commits an act of bribery. With over 40 subsidiaries, branches, and logistics worldwide, SamsungSDS has diverted into the business system centering on the local market, and it is strengthening its efforts to prevent corruption. Direct or indirect offering of bribes is prohibited. Also, the processing of company expenses must comply with the procedures prescribed in the internal policies. Third, let's take a look at intellectual property rights. Intellectual property rights refer to the rights over creations of the mind, and it is illegal to copy, falsify, or use the contents without the consent of the owner. Have you heard of the term patent troll? It refers to the companies that generate income through patent litigations without engaging in other businesses. The total number of patent litigations filed against the IT companies has increased dramatically over the past decade. Notably, almost 18% increased from the previous year, and it's continuing to increase from year to year. In particular, precautions must be exercised to prevent any license infringements when providing IT services. Software licensing involves purchasing not the ownership rights, but the right to use the software. Therefore, the acquired license must be used in accordance with the corresponding terms and conditions. In addition, although open sources can be used for free, the terms and conditions imposed by the copyright holder must be complied with. That is, particular precautions must be exercised for the GPL licenses, as they must be returned to the license holder after their term of use. Having gone through ICT outsourcing services, SI and SCL phases, SamsungSDS is now strategically positioned at a turning point to create new values through IT solutions and services. Before using any technologies for our IT solutions and services, we must check whether the intellectual property rights, such as the patent, design, and copyright, can or cannot be used. Make sure to check that the patent, trademark, and design have been registered. When using the intellectual property rights of others, make sure to obtain the necessary rights under the contract prior to use. In addition, software licenses must be used in accordance with the corresponding terms and conditions. Finally, let's examine personal data privacy. Personal data is information that can be used to identify a specific individual. It is illegal to collect or disclose such data without the consent of the individual or use it for purposes other than those stipulated at the time of collection. Personal data privacy has now become one of the most serious global issues, as the illegal disclosure of personal information has recently become rampant worldwide. While providing global ICT services, SamsungSDS must handle enormous personal or confidential data of the clients. So we must check in advance and comply with the local laws and regulations related to data protection of other countries. Also, the amendment of the data protection approved by the EU Parliament in March this year has brought up the level of the personal data protection. Accordingly, a great deal of attention must be paid to the protection of personal information since violations could result in a fine of up to 100 million euros or 5% of the total company revenues. It has now become so important to learn and follow the local regulations on data protection. We should only collect the necessary personal data when providing our services and forbid the use of collected data for any other purposes. Our journey has begun, and we have set sail to conquer the global market and soar to the top. With an ever-increasing emphasis on corporate ethics and against all the fierce competition, we shall proudly light up the world under the great name of Samsung. Compliance, it is our promise.